Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Brainware, which we've titled The Magic of Brainware Distiller, Automating Document-Intensive Business Process. I'll be your host today. My name is Charlie Kaplan. I run the marketing organization for Brainware. When I kind of survey the landscape and think about the things that are facing finance leadership, Hackett Group did a recent study which I found intriguing and in many cases I think shed some light on the things that you're facing in your organizations or perhaps leadership in your organizations is thinking about and making a priority for you as well. The questions are these: as we kind of come back globally from a recession with signs of hope and promise, ahead, the questions that we're asking our organizations: did we cut deep enough when we had to make cuts over the last 2 to 3 years? And in so doing, did we actually cut too deep so that we cut to the core and may have affected our talent pool, the resources that we own in the organization that have to get the work done? Are we on track as we look forward to achieve our goals, either reset goals or aggressive growth goals that may be trying to attain for our organization? And in all of this context, are we in fact part of what industry pundits call the new normal? Has there in fact been a paradigm shift in terms of operations within these organizations, finance operations and others? And if we were, God forbid, to face another crisis like we had, a global economic crisis, could we survive it? Or would we, would it in fact damage us in some way? Really what this speaks to is business agility, which seems to be the priority theme for most finance executives, operations executives in the companies that we see and work with every day. Question being, we're all trying to get a sense for what else is out there, kind of what lies beyond, what's over the horizon. I like to characterize this as us having shifted business from sort of a sense and respond set of capabilities to something now I'd call predict and prevent. The operations, the systems, the technologies we deploy really need to help us see what's beyond through analytics, business intelligence, and the like, and take action now to prevent any type of disaster rather than simply trying to wait it out and respond as it's occurring. And so with these kind of being the backdrop for what we're facing at an organizational level, clearly we recognize that there are certain challenges that lie that may be more directly tied to the topic today, which is around how do you automate things like document and data capture. But with that, it's interesting. IDC, the research firm, did a recent study just to look at what I think we all feel every day, which is the explosive growth of information. Just to put this in perspective as well, which I think is hard to imagine what we're talking about until you sort of bring it down to earth sometimes. In 2009, when they did the study and they were looking at the content universe, they measured it at 0.8 zettabytes. And a zettabyte, just from a perspective, is a trillion gigabytes, right? Zettabyte wasn't even a term I think we were using 2 or 3 years ago. So we're inventing new language to describe, or certainly making it mainstream, the sheer volume of information that we're talking about. To give you that perspective then on the growth, they expect this digital content universe to grow, to explode, in fact, to 35 zettabytes by 2020. So less than 10 years from now, 44-fold increase in the digital universe. And as that perspective, a trillion seconds is longer than what's recorded history, or more than 32,000 years. So you can see, with the explosion of this information, digital information, we've really got our work both as practitioners and users of this information, plus us in the technology vendor space really have to provide the technologies that can help manage this digital content in an effective way. Looking at it a little bit more specifically then, the general industry number is then that about 80% of the documents that drive the business processes in our organizations are unstructured. And by that I mean they don't fit a specific form or format. These are documents that we all know and use every day, right? Invoices, orders, remittances, contracts, explanation of benefits, loan documents, and the like. These drive transactional processes in our organization such that the information contained on these documents needs to be quickly and accurately entered into the back-end systems so that they can drive these functions. These are both our ERP systems, which typically run the finance function, whatever flavor of ERP you're using, as well as the content management systems, document management systems that need to be properly indexed, where metadata needs to be stored from these documents so that for regulatory compliance and then even more strategic purposes of evaluation, we can get access to this stuff in a timely manner. All of this, by the way, we need to do not only faster and more efficiently, but we need to try and do it at lower and lower cost to maintain that business agility that is, one of the key drivers for the finance function today. So to kind of keep this, interactive somewhat, I always love to include a few poll questions to kind of get a sense of the pulse of you all in the audience. And so I put in 3 or 4 poll questions into today's presentation, and I simply ask that you take a moment here when I open the poll and to let us know which of the following these either are or could become a barrier for your company to investing in the technologies that automate document capture or even data capture. Good. So with the different responses, a pretty interesting distribution of responses came back, and it looks like pretty equal split between IT resource constraints, which is an interesting perspective, as well as cost. Now, fortunately, most companies recognize that having to have the paper on hand for compliance is becoming less and less relevant. A digital image, in an archive that can be easily retrieved is, typically the way it goes. Too hard or too expensive to integrate, I think certainly a concern shared by some. The documents and forms too complex to automate by, a third of the returns responses is something that hopefully will try and dispel some of that myth today, and in fact show you that there are ways to help automate that allow you to do it with minimal IT resource, so that you help, kind of bust that constraint, and at a cost that really helps you return your investment in a very short amount of time. So in a recent IDC study, you can see the same question was asked with a few more response choices, and the distribution was similar but somewhat different. You can see with this survey that they ran, which was done just over a year ago, the need to retain paper for compliance was in fact quite high. Could be due to the demographic of the audience, or could simply be due to the fact that may have been less investment by the folks in the response group to the technologies that allow them to automate that. So you can see a rather interesting set of results, and with that one exception, pretty consistent with you all on the phone with us today. They also asked the question in the same study about the perceived return on investment from scanning and capture projects, and you can see how the question was phrased there. The interesting point being that 60% of the respondents in this poll a year ago said that the return was as good or better than other IT-related projects. So I think that's what that's indicative of, and the case studies that are going to market now by Brainware and other vendors, I think clearly point to the measurable returns that can be generated from data capture, document capture, both technology and process. So with that then, we've got a second poll question here in which we ask, which of the following document types would derive the most benefit from automation in your organization? So really just trying to get a sense for what is it that you're considering. And I do have some data from a recent survey that will kind of show this as well. So with that, we'll let you answer the question here. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, for doing that. So we will close the poll and present the results so you can see how your counterparts answered the questions. Not surprisingly here, invoices and other accounting documents lead the pack. I think it's well known, and again, the case studies prove out that AP-related automation can drive measurable and oftentimes significant results to the bottom line. So that's certainly a part of what we'll talk about today. But I think increasingly, other document types such as sales orders and claims and so forth can be automated as well with very measurable results that can be presented back to the organization. As I mentioned then with that, this was done as part of a similar IDC study in which they asked sort of a similar related question as to how this technology was being used. And so I think the maturity around invoice processing is clearly there, both for companies that are already using it as well as those that are expecting to implement it, within the next 12 months. Slightly different from how you all just responded. Sales order and purchase order processing is quite high on this list, followed by contract management, and you can read the rest of the responses. But what I sense from our own perspective in the industry is I think there's a growing recognition that even the more complex document types can in fact be automated, generating the same and in some cases even greater results than what you're seeing in the AP space with invoice processing as well. Okay, so third question. Wanted to ask the question, effectively what this is getting at is for the document type that you described, how many people are actually keying data in your organization? Just so you can again begin to get a sense of, what it is in terms of the people resource that's taking to key these documents, because typically that's how it's being done today, either full key or a partial key from an image or a pickup from wherever maybe your current data capture technology is leaving off. Okay, very good. I'll close that. We'll share the results. And as you see, this is called a bimodal distribution, is what you see here. So 25% of the respondents in the 1 to 5, which suggests, pretty focused or perhaps lower volume, then 42% of respondents, more than 25 people keying. This is interesting, and obviously, I think knowing your own document types that you're driving here could be very interesting, whether this is an AP or more broadly across other document types as well. But this is always something to take into consideration when you're looking at automation. Kind of a key component of it is, can you better deploy your people, which is one of those concerns of the CFO in the finance organization is, let's make sure that the talent pool that we have are being used for the highest and best purposes for the company and not being stuck doing routine manual data entry where it's not needed. So we go into plenty of organizations where we see something that looks just like this, where we still have effectively the old typing pool. And it's largely because the documents are so broadly diverse that it's traditionally relied on people to key them. Whether we're talking about invoices, orders, remittances, contracts, and the like, it's typically the variety as well as the volume and complexity of documents that require it to be keyed. And so, what we're talking about today is technology, specifically Brainware Distiller, that allows you to automate this with a high degree of accuracy and, in fact, drive the benefit, to the bottom line. So the last poll question then here asks about your perception of the biggest benefits that can be realized from automating data capture. And again, there may be additional. These tend to be the ones that we see most people respond to, whether it's lowering cost, improving turnaround time, increasing visibility through reporting and dashboarding and business analytics, reducing errors, or I know there's always folks where it's, we're sort of still not sure what the benefit might be. Great. Thank you. So let me close that. I will share the results. And again, reducing costs is certainly a key, but turnaround time, cycle time, getting the information into the system, not surprisingly, is right behind it, as is better visibility and reporting, which I think really speaks to the analytics and the more predictive aspects, that ultimately we can drive into these business processes. And then a third of you, report that fewer errors is also driving as well. This is interesting in that we've done other studies where we've asked the very same question. And I will point out that fewer errors always tends to sort of show up further down the list. And yet we asked a similar question, which I won't ask in today's webinar, but you can actually read it in the Automated Data Capture Survey study results that we have on our website. You can see that 2/3 of the folks that are using data capture in their operations for accounts payable report fewer errors as being a benefit. So it is a clear benefit, even though it may be one of those things that doesn't always hit the top of the list. So the magic actually, comes into play when it's, how do we turn this paper into profit for our organizations, right? And so, there are companies that are doing just that today. And I'll just briefly describe a few of these that we work with who've automated data capture across a broad variety of different document types to do just that. We work with a very large financial services firm, and what they are in the process of doing is automating remittance processing. So they've got 10,000 wholesale lockbox customers processing about 1.2 million pages of remittances a day, and effectively have replaced the bulk of 400 people that were previously keying this, so that they can ensure minimal cycle time with maximum accuracy, not only on the check and validating the check information, but more importantly on the remittance detail, which goes behind that as well, so that they can properly apply cash for their end customers. Same thing is done by Airbus. They process 5 million invoices a year by only 4 people handling exceptions. And so we love to take customers into that environment and show them how Airbus is processing all of these invoices with so few people into a very large SAP system on the back end. Halliburton, the energy services company, does a couple of million invoices a year, 92% of which, the PO-based invoices, post directly into SAP without any manual data entry. So we call that a touchless process, a touchless pass, so that in fact we like to tease that the mailroom guy at Halliburton pays 92% of the invoices. Sun Chemical is a large pigment and dye manufacturer for inks, and in this case the system, which one of the key values of the system is it does in fact set up very, very quickly, had it up and running in an SAP and OpenText environment in 3 weeks, processing documents at 93 to 99% field level accuracy. Alltel Wireless did in fact turn their paper into profit by speeding the cycle time from well in excess of 3 weeks down to less than 48 hours for their invoices. And so what they turned is a backlog of invoices, paper-based invoices, into early payment discounts, which in year 1 equaled $16 million. And if you look at that slightly differently, Alltel Wireless, subsequently acquired by Verizon, was a 10% EBITDA margin company, which said $16 million in early payment discounts is in fact $160 million in revenue equivalent. So quite a compelling value prop for them as well. Alltel's only comment about the system was they wished that they had done it sooner. We recently signed down Southwestern Energy. They're actually using Brainware Distiller as a mailroom automation solution, so processing about 35 million documents, both paper and electronic, into 1,000 different document classes in front of an Oracle system at that organization. Shell Petroleum has standardized Brainware Distiller to front-end their global SAP rollout, processing about 5 million pages of invoices a year in 30 different languages. And then E.ON, which is also a very large energy company, also uses this as a mailroom application, processing about 5 million documents a year into a Documentum backend. Their key value being they needed the indexing and metadata available nearly immediately so that they could respond to government inquiries about specific nuclear plants that they were managing. So you can see a broad diversity of applications, but all using the same technology to help automate at both scale and complexity of document. Those customers are just a small sample set of the many, many customers that we work with worldwide that represent a broad range of different industries, from energy, oil, and gas to technology to financial services and even healthcare. You can see that these companies, which many of whom are leaders in their own right, are in fact choosing Distiller to help automate these back office functions. The one thing that they all hold in common, though, is why they've selected Brainware. And so to kind of boil it down, I think of sort of 3 key features, capabilities of the product that have made it the right solution for those organizations. First is the extraction rate that we get off of documents. Brainware Distiller is designed to capture data from unstructured documents. semi-structured, unstructured documents. And to my knowledge, no other technology in the market space gets higher rates of data extraction. We routinely get 90 to 99%, and much of that coming right out of the box. So where data extraction and data accuracy is paramount for your organization, Brainware Distiller is the technology that can get the most data off the page. It's also the most scalable solution in the market today. And by scalable, I mean a couple of different things. It scales both up and it scales out. Up in terms of volume. It scales. We've got customers that process thousands of pages a day. We've got customers that process literally millions of pages a day. So it really becomes a platform for your organization, regardless of whether you're using it for invoices, orders, remittances, contracts, using it in the mailroom, in fact, to capture all of the documents that come into the organization. Distiller's scalability allows it to serve as that platform for your data capture needs. And then finally, because of the intelligence that's built into the system, it sets up fast. I have yet to meet a customer that we've ever worked with that didn't sign a deal where we want to get things going and get the product implemented quickly so you can start to return that investment. And so as I indicated with Sun Chemical and many of our other customers, we can set it up fast. You don't have to build a template or a rule set for every document type. Set it up fast so that right out of the box you're getting very high recognition rates, and in fact helping you redeploy, reposition the folks that would otherwise be keying that data. The way we do this is fundamentally different, and so there's a couple of things that you should know about the product so you understand more deeply what it is we're showing you. The technology that forms the underpinning for Brainware Distiller, which is the product, is proprietary and was invented by Brainware to specifically handle very complex unstructured information. And so with that, we're allowed to break a lot of the barriers that have typically existed with what you might think of as OCR-based technology. It breaks into three categories. We do what's called classification. So this is simply content-based sorting of documents. Language independent, so that with a few simple examples, the system can learn, much like a human being would, how to sort documents automatically, even when they vary in language or layout. Once we know what the document is, then we can extract the relevant data based on its context. And so by that I mean we don't require a set of rules or templates or anchors or zones or other methods that you might be familiar with, but in fact read the fields and the line item detail off of the document much as you would as a human being. This allows the data to move around the page, right, so that you can have some level of document diversity without having to create a map or to have recognized each and every document at least once before you try and process it through the system. And then finally, we invented our own search technology, which is integrated with Distiller so that we can validate the information before we try and post it into the backend system. And we do so knowing that when you're working with scanned documents or complex documents, you run into things like OCR errors and so forth. So when we go to match and reconcile data, we do it in a way that's fault tolerant, but allows for the highest levels of recognition accuracy in the market space. That engine then plugs into or forms the underpinning of the application we call Brainware Distiller. Brainware Distiller is a pass-through application, so if you look at this document from left to right, documents, be it electronic documents or paper documents that have been scanned, enter the system, we classify them, extract the relevant data, validate or reconcile that, and then integrate that information with a back-end system. So we're passing it into your existing enterprise apps, which can also include your workflow if you have an existing workflow in place, and provide the visibility or the reporting on that entire process so that from the point of receipt to the to the end point where we pass the data off, you get complete visibility into not only the documents but the data that's captured along the way as well. When I say content-based classification, just by way of simple reference, we train it based on examples. A document sample set can be as simple as 5 to 7, 15 documents that represent a class, and the class would be something like invoices. In this case, I use an example of EOBs, healthcare remittance document, orders. It could be 1,000 different types, like is the case with Southwestern Energy. But you train them by example without having to describe specific features or attributes of the documents, which is typically more rules-based. And with that, the system then can automatically sort new documents, sight unseen, into their appropriate bucket. Value being, you don't have to pre-sort all this stuff in the mailroom or before you feed it into the application. Once the document has been sorted or classified, then we can extract the relevant data, because what we extract from an invoice might be different, obviously, from what we extract from a sales order or a contract or whatever the case may be. In this case, it's a simple invoice example to show you that we capture not only all of the header information, but also grab the line item detail as well. And it goes one step further. We not only extract the line item detail, but we can do the line pairing with the ERP system on the back end, so that if in this case, you have a simple looking invoice with 2 line items on it, but a purchase order that has 20 or 200 or 2,000 lines in it, we can pair those automatically. And this applies whether it's an invoice, a remittance, a check, a contract, whatever the case may be. The process works the same, the application's the same, and so therefore the documents that you can use. So with that, I thank you all for joining us. I thank you for your attention, and stay tuned because we do these webinars quite frequently, and we hope you'll join us for the next one.